Hey everybody, welcome back to One Seed, One World. So today we're going to talk about chickpeas, which I am growing for the first time this year. And kind of like the goji berry episode, this was another one that I didn't do a whole lot of research on before I started growing it. So I wanted to give you a few tips maybe and little updates on how my chickpea growing has been going so far this year. So let's get into it.
Oh, chickpeas, you took your time. Popped up late, but held the line. Tiny harvest, bigger tail. One stubborn seed on a winding trail.
So, chickpeas are part of the legume family, beans. And they are a little bit different than what you would expect. They definitely came up different than what I would expect. Like when kidney beans or scarlet runner beans, green beans, any of the type of beans that you generally grow, whether they're dry, like something that you're growing for a dried bean or a pole bean or a bush bean, when they first come up, they all kind of look the same. And so that's what I was expecting from chickpeas because they're part of the bean family. However, they don't look the same at all. They have a completely different leaf system going on than any other bean that I've ever grown. Chickpeas, or also as they are known, garbanzo beans, are part of a group called a pulse crop. And a pulse crop is something that is grown specifically for a dried bean. Like you wouldn't eat the pods or the leaves or use them as snap beans. They're just grown for the dried bean inside. So here you'll see my little chickpea crop, and you may notice that there are some bare patches in here, and that is because I only had a 50% germination rate. Now chickpeas prefer warm soil, warm weather, and not being very wet. I started off with 20 seeds that I planted at Mother's Day, and normally Mother's Day would be a good time to be planting any of your bean seeds. But because chickpeas are a little bit more picky, I had a couple of problems. What happened was shortly after Mother's Day, we had a bunch of rain and even some cold nights where it got down into the high 40s. Germination for chickpeas is not a fan of high 40s and a lot of rain. And so only 50% of them came up. But I still got a few little plants here that will work. But if you are choosing to plant chickpeas, garbanzo beans, just take that in consideration that your germination rates might not be so great if you end up getting some batches of cold weather and a lot of rain. Now this patch that you're looking at here is about 8 different types of dried beans. I've got Calypso and Pinto and Jacob's Cattle and several other types of soup beans that I'm growing. And you'll notice that they kind of all look the same, all the leaves and everything. However, if you take a look here, this is what I was talking about, how chickpeas look a little different. They have these kind of ferny looking leaves instead. That makes them very kind of original to themselves and much different than your standard other type of bean crop that you might be growing. Now, speaking of these little feathery leaves that look so different, they might not look like a bean to you, and there is another type of plant out there that looks fairly similar that is not going to give you any beans and is kind of an impostor plant. They're not exactly the same, but to an untrained eye, they might look like, hey, I've got some chickpeas growing. But let me show you the impostor plant, because I've got some of that too. And it's not anything that you particularly want growing in your garden, especially if it's around your chickpeas. This plant here is growing in amongst my celosia plants. And as you will notice, it also has the little kind of ferny looking leaves on the stem. And it looks very similar. However, it also has these flowers that grow on it. And what this is crown vetch, which is pretty much an invasive weed that has horrible root systems that will spread all underneath of your other plants and choke out stuff and just go crazy. I've got a bunch of it that pops up in this area every year. but it looks very similar to chickpeas or garbanzo bean plants. So it's just something to keep an eye on. There are some subtle differences in the leaves and stems, and then also chickpeas don't have these purple flowers. They get little white or yellow flowers on them once they start blossoming. Now that we covered that section, let's take a real quick break for a commercial.
Do you suffer from chronic Blanchard syndrome? Are your clothes failing to express your love of nature, gardening, or general oddball charm? Now there's hope. Introducing Teeazithromycin, a breakthrough in botanical self-expression, brought to you by One Seed, One World. Clinically proven to improve mood, boost compost confidence, and increase compliments from strangers at farmers markets. Side effects may include uncontrollable smiling, unsolicited fist bumps, garden envy from neighbors, and mild obsession with pollinators. Not recommended for those who dislike fun. Consult your inner child before use. Teeazithromycin, because you deserve more than just sleeves. Ask your compost pile if Teeazithromycin is right for you.
Now when you're growing other types of beans, you normally get a lot of pods, and a lot of those pods will have multiple beans in them. With chickpeas, garbanzo beans, not so much. You get about 30 to 50 pods per plant, and each pod only has 2 seeds in it. And that's if everything works out perfectly and you just have a great harvest. So, you know, say everything went perfectly for me and I got 50 pods per plant, I would end up with about 500 chickpeas. That sounds like a lot, but once they're dried and everything, it takes about 1,200 to 1,400 chickpeas to make a pound. So I won't be opening any type of hummus factory off of my little crop here. What I will probably do is save some for eating if I get a good crop, but then try to save a larger batch for replanting next year so I can have a bigger crop and maybe go into the hummus business. I don't know. But that's just something to think about if you are planting, because I bought, I think, just 1 pack of 20 seeds. I was like, oh man, the way beans normally grow, it's going to be more than enough from what I need. But with chickpeas, especially since they stay on the vine until they're dry, you're not picking them throughout the season, you're going to need a bigger crop to get any sort of harvest, or enough harvest to probably make a lot of hummus and do a lot of things that you want to do with them. And so you have to decide whether it's worth it to grow your own if you have a big enough patch, or if it's easier for you to just go buy a can of chickpeas at the local grocery store. So that's kind of what I've learned about chickpeas so far. The difference in the leaves, they're much slower growers. You have to give them a little bit more space. They do kind of take their time. They're much more picky than other types of beans with when it comes to weather and moisture. They like it drier, they like it hotter. And if you plant them and end up getting some cold, rainy sections of weather, then you might not get a very good germination rate. Whereas with all my other beans, they all just blew up and are growing like crazy. Meanwhile, the little old chickpea patch here is just kind of ambling along, taking its time, although I am starting to see a couple of potential blossoms. Maybe they're really tiny, but I think I got some little tiny yellow blossoms that might be starting, but we'll see. So have you grown chickpeas before? And if you have, let me know what your experience was. Did they do well for you? What problems did you have? Did you encounter different types of pests that maybe you didn't expect, or diseases and whatnot? I don't know, because this is my first time, and so far they look healthy, the ones that came up, and I haven't had any types of issues so far. So we will see how it goes here on out, and I'll give you an update as the season progresses on where I end up with at the end of the season and my harvest. But I'm interested to know if you've grown them before and how your experience was. So put your comments down below. Anyway, I appreciate that you're here hanging out with me again today, and whatever's going on in your neck of the woods, I hope it's working out fantastic for you and that you're having a great 2025 growing season. But if you haven't already, please subscribe, like, share, all that kind of stuff. and we will see you again soon. Have a great day.
I planted you
Namaste.
deep in a raised up row, said a little prayer and watched you grow, but half of you vanished without a sound. Guess chickpeas don't like soggy ground. Oh, chickpeas, you took your time, popped up late but held the line. Tiny harvest, bigger tail, one stubborn seed on a winding trail.